Do your end users always, and I mean always, without exception, work on company owned devices and IT approved apps? I didn't think so. So, my next question is, how do you keep your company's data safe when it's sitting on all those unmanaged apps and devices? 1Password has an answer to this question: Extended Access Management. 1Password Extended Access Management helps you secure every sign in for every app on every device because it solves the problems traditional IAM and MDM can't touch. Check it out at securityweekly.com/1password. ThreatLocker implements a least privileged approach to cybersecurity, blocking every executable unless specifically authorized by your team. This methodology mitigates ransomware, supply chain attacks, and zero-day exploits. It ensures 24/7, 365 protection for your organization. To learn more about how ThreatLocker can help prevent known and unknown threats in your digital environment, safeguard your data and operations from threat actors, and align your organization with compliance frameworks, visit securityweekly.com/ThreatLocker. Welcome back to Enterprise Security Weekly. Francis Dinha joins us today to talk about guiding an open source business through troubled times. Francis is the CEO and founder of Open VPN Inc., the commercial side of the popular Open VPN software. Welcome to the show, Francis.
Thank you so much. Pleasure to be here.
And for just right at the beginning here, for folks who are thinking, wait, there's an Open VPN Inc. Like, how does that work? Let's maybe talk a little bit about the history of the company, and why create a commercial version of an open source software.
Okay, so the history started from James Yonan, who actually wrote the software, the original open source, right? So he had kind of an interesting website, and then I actually met James through actually online. We met, and I was actually starting some ideas about tunneling and VPN and so on. So I found this little project.
How long ago? Give us some idea.
That was on 2000. I don't want to tell you how old I am, so that's you're gonna discover my age. That was 20 years ago. I mean, okay. 2005, right? We are in 25. Yeah, 2005, yep. Exactly the time. And actually, so I hired him. He just didn't, he was just doing open source, but there was not much out there for him, right? I mean, this is his passion, but he didn't know how to, commercialize that. It was mostly he had some kind of ads there that was not bringing any money to him. So I hired him. I said, look, I want to have this project, but I have a little bit problem because I have another engineer who installed it, but there was just too many bugs, too many issues with it. And so I told him there are many issues with especially when you run over TCP, UDP is blocked, so many things, right? And I want to build these layers on top of it. So he came in and basically as a consultant helped me. And I found that he was a very interesting person and very smart. And I say, James, what about we turn this into commercial? And he said, no, I don't know. Are you sure? You think we can make a commercial version of it? I say, yeah, of course we can make a commercial version of it. So because the open source is it took 3 engineers to really build it and to really build something around it. So why don't we build that entire backend and the management and the UI and whatever we need to do, right? We say, okay, so I end up actually raising some capital, not a lot of money, myself and some angel investor that I knew actually. So that's when we started, we venturing into Access Server, which you see. So we're still selling that product. So the Access Server, the idea was to take the open source. And so what we did is we say, okay, let's merge together. So basically I changed the name of the company to Open VPN Inc. I said, well, let's change it to Open VPN anyhow. But then I say, I'm going to have to change the website. This can't be just open source, right? So he and a few engineers there. I brought a person who used to work for Nokia actually, and they developed VPN kind of at the time appliance. But I say I'm not interested in appliance. I want to have this software based. Eventually, actually, I had the idea of the cloud. I want a software in Linux so you can deploy it any kind of hardware platform. So that's what we did. We created the Access Server, and that was like when we launched it, So there were a lot of people maybe mad at us at the time, by the way, So it was based on connection. So we charge per connection, right? So I started for $5 a year per connection, and some people kind of email me, "That's a rip off. This is a free.
It's
Why
a
should I?"
ripoff. Wow.
Yeah, it's a rip off. And now you don't know. I mean, the price we start increasing, we changing the pricing model and all that. So then the access server really started growing, but then we decided, okay, we need to develop something like similar like cloud, right? We want to make it much simpler, and that's when Cloud Connexa came in, and so we developed something different. It's not an open source; it's really a server. We call it private gateway multi-tenancy. So we have to solve the problem of virtualizations of the network. So we build a virtualized network without having to rely on the computing of virtualization of the computing. So this was completely at the network level. So we kind of, I say, okay, there's something called MPLS, and what we need to do, we need to reinvent MPLS and make it more dynamic. So that's what we did. And that's what the whole cloud connects. So we have our own infrastructure. So you can choose self-hosted access server, and we grew rapidly, especially during pandemic for remote access. And now we are like at 50 million ARR, annual recurring revenue, without even raising any money from venture capital. So I brought angel investor, and I gave them just preferred but no voting. So that's really allowed us to kind of do the things the way we want to do, right, and not have somebody trying to accelerate this faster. Right. So we're at the junction where we need to do things a little bit differently now because the market is changing and so many things and so many hypes. So VPN, the only thing it's kind of, it got very, how would I say, very polluted or muddy. It's kind of with this consumer VPN. So everybody, VPN, it's a consumer VPN, it's pricey. No. We're trying. So we start adding a lot of layers of access control, which today they call ZTNA. All right. So we had that anyhow at the access server. You can do access control. So we're expanding the product. We're improving the product, and that's where now it's since we have the commercial version, we have the dilemma of the name Open VPN. So what do we do? Now I'm not sure if I want to reveal the strategy outside of the company, but we do have a particular strategy. What we're going to do to scale. My goal in 5 years, I want to scale to 10x from 50 going to 500 million. Oh, wow. So, still I'm staying young, so I can do that. Not just, well, I'll never quit working. I love what I do. So, but we're moving toward edge security, ZTNA, zero trust network access.
I was going to bring that up. Yeah.
All sort of things. Yes.
Yeah. I think we used to call it software defined perimeter, right? Like the idea that you don't have to expose a service to the public internet to be able to give people access to things behind a firewall, right?
Correct. Correct.
Yeah. This idea.
Yeah, I mean, there are so many definitions. SDP, it's kind of, okay, ZTNA, it's really access control. So you want to have some device posture, you want to define policies, who can access what. So it's mostly at the network level, right? That's what ZTNA, but I mean, it's called ZTNA, which is a great way of basically saying firewall capabilities, pretty much.
Yeah.
So that's the history, making it kind of short version.
Yeah, and it's very interesting, that so some of what you do, you still support the Open VPN software, right?
Oh, absolutely. We hired all the open source community. Most of them came and joined us. So now they are under the umbrella of Open VPN. So there is no we have the community, but the community really, it's not like on their own and they don't get paid or anything like that. They are really fully working staff because we have one of, like they worked on this DCO, basically the acceleration of data channel offload, which goes into Linux, and now we're pushing it upstream. So we are very optimistic that the Linux now community, they've been giving us comment, they're going to accept it in part of the Linux itself. So it's going to be part of the Linux distribution in the kernel itself.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, well, it sounds like a lot of the value you get with on the commercial side is, you said you built a UI, you built all this, and that stuff is not open sourced, right? That stuff the augmented, I would think of it as like OpenVPN is the core product. And then what you sell is the augmented product, right? The pieces that make it easier to use at scale, maybe easier for an end user to install and manage on an endpoint or something.
Absolutely. I mean, think about it like somebody like a company would rather with 10 employee and 20. Yeah, they can take the open source and build it, but it's going to take really a good IT person. Plus, you have to manage it, maybe the command line, blah, 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 all that stuff. It's going to cost you hundreds of thousands of dollars probably a year to really do it, if you think in terms of the human capital, right? But think about it. If you subscribe to the access server, which is more of a subscription, annual or monthly, it probably is going to cost them only a few hundred, couple of $1,000s a year. That's it. And you've got a product. It's full-fledged, supported. So that's the idea, right?
Yeah, and it's somebody who's worked mostly for startups on the vendor side in sales and marketing roles. I wonder like how much easier that job is for you because you started with a popular open source product versus maybe a name nobody knows, right? Like how much of your that 50 million ARR just walked in your door without you having to cold call anybody or have a booth at RSA, or what does that look like for you?
Well, it didn't come easy at all, actually. I mean, the open source, it's open source, right? It was very, very, I mean, we didn't have a lot of conversion from the community itself. So we have to go out there. First of all, we have to do the content, revamp the whole website, and do a lot of SEO and the content marketing. So we have to do a lot of inbound marketing. So I would say the traffic has increased by 100x, if you think about it, because of that. A lot of content marketing. So mostly we focus on the content marketing and the operational side of it, right? And also we establish actually a customer success team. So the inbound comes in and we capture the email and then we start engaging. So I call it a DEAR model, DEAR, which is drive, engage, activate, retain. So we build a model around this, how to drive the traffic to our website. I wasn't interested in outbound sales. I was only interested in inbound. So we drive the traffic, we engage them, we then activate, and then we retain as much as we can, So believe it or not, over 90% of our customer, it's all automatically they convert, basically self-serve. We have that 10%, less than 10%. We get our salespeople, engaged with them, But this is really our kind of, I would say, our method in terms of how do we get people in and how we convert them to a real paying customers, right? By the way, our first customer was Google. 3 years we had them as a customer. Yeah, they gave us a lot of input about the access server. Then they went off and started this Corp. What is called that product?
Beyond Corp.
Beyond Corp. Yeah. Exactly. And they started Beyond Corp because we couldn't keep up. So I was telling James, he said, wow, we've got Google. And I say, okay, James, this is a blessing, but it's a curse too. We need to scale this. We can't scale because an enterprise like that, they kept us busy. And basically you don't get a lot of money. So now we scale, our market is more SMBs. So we have close to 20,000 business customers, small to medium size. And then now we're going a little bit upstream, going to enterprise as well. So this is our model. So yeah, I mean, you're not gonna, just because you have an open source doesn't mean you're gonna get everything for free. You still have to do the work in terms of go to market and and sales and the support infrastructure. So you have to really build the operation about it.
Is it common that you have to do education around the open source component, or is it not something that your paying customers ask about? Like, do you feel like the go-to-market motion is different with an open source kind of underpinning where you have to do some of that education, or has it not been an issue?
It hasn't been an issue, but in terms of the education of open source, obviously, a lot of people who come to us, they're very familiar with Open VPN. The first thing is, oh, we thought it was open source. Oh, we didn't know you have a commercial version of it. But also what we did in that, because it didn't require a lot of education, is they're familiar with open source, but it was very hard for them to set it up. I say, okay, you can get the commercial version, and it's a freemium model. So there we build a freemium model in top of the open source. So with the freemium, you can download it for 3 connections for free and try all the features and so on. So that really helped us to to scale and help us to really educate the market about our product.
And do you feel like there's a differential between having an open source under like back end and the amount of time and resources you're able to devote to some of the better features and things like that, because you're not having to focus as much on the open source part of it?
Well,
like
actually,
yourself to proprietary software.
There's a proprietary we have on top of it, and then we have open source. But we do invest a lot on the core itself. So right now, just to give you an example, when WireGuard, you're going to ask me about the WireGuard came in. The WireGuard is basically everybody say, "Oh, this is faster," and that's when we have to catch up with the DCO, so the data channel offload. And now we are, as this speed-wise, is equal to WireGuard. I mean, if you some of the recent articles. The other aspects of it now, I've actually started another project for the core. So the cores keep changing and improving as well. So we've been investing a lot on the core. We have to catch up, right? So now what we're saying, let's do a multi-data channel, meaning the client. Remember, the architecture of OpenVPN is client to server architecture. It's basically client can only talk to one server, right, or a cluster of server. So we are also adding the capability now. A client can talk to a bunch of server, because now we're moving toward edge computing, and that's one of the characteristics that we want to stay ahead of the game as well. The nice things about OpenVPN, I mean, this is the thing. The thing is, it's based on OpenSSL, so we get a lot of things in a way for free. All the ciphers, all that stuff, right? The problem. Well, WireGuard is great in terms of the speeds and in terms of footprint and all that stuff, right? But the things is the ciphers are embedded in it, right? So it's very hard to leverage an OpenSSL. It's not based on OpenSSL. So.
Yeah, I was going to ask about competition, because I don't know what license you're using for the open source version of OpenVPN, but yeah, I do imagine that you're competing with other companies that are also using the same core product, right? That are
They
also,
do.
Yeah, it sounds like WireGuard is based on different technology. I don't know the internals of VPN products very well, but
yeah.
But yeah, I wonder if that throws some additional complexity into it.
It does. There are actually 3 components if you think about it. There's the market, there's the product, and there's the technology, the underlying technology. So the market itself, there's the whole thing about ZTNA. Let's move towards ZTNA. VPN is dead. So there is this non-VPN where we have to compete. So how do we position ourselves? So that's one challenge we have. And we say, okay, we have OpenVPN. It's an open source. ZTNA, I understand, but the underneath technology of the ZTNA, there is tunneling. It's VPN, period. And everybody understands that. I was just talking with Rajat, who's the CEO of JumpCloud. He said, why don't you call it out in the market? Just tell them this is bullshit. Sorry, I don't mean to say.
But, oh, no, you can say
it's all right. I actually posted bullshit on LinkedIn this morning.
Okay.
There's a W.C. Fields quote that's, you can't dazzle them with brilliance.
So that strategy from a market perspective, we're saying the underneath is, yes, our name is open, but we're enhancing OpenVPN. If you look at Cloud Connexa, it has all the feature of ZTNA, with the device posture, all aspects of domain routing. We route at the application level, all sort of things, right? So that's from the market. From a product perspective, of course, there's a lot of companies like, these scalers, and, you've got the Netscope, you've got all these guys, right? But I mean, that's another competition, but it depends where you're positioning yourself. You see, a lot of these guys are really more going first enterprise. We're more small to medium-sized business and going upstream slowly. And then you get another product, it's more in the consumer market, which that's making a lot of noises, like NordVPN, blah, 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 all these guys, right? But that's different. We're not going after that market, right? Actually, anybody can use Cloud Connexa and set up a connector at home
Sure.
And if you're interested in watching Netflix, you can travel anywhere and watch Netflix, and your IP is your home IP. So it's a much better
VPN's a
solution.
VPN. Well, and you won't be on one of those lists. Like I've noticed, I can't use
exactly.
ChatGPT
And it's
from a
your
VPN.
IP, nobody else. You're not cheating. Not the other thing is you're sharing that IP with a bunch of people. So yeah, I can understand that the consumer have hard time. So that's the product. Then there is the technology, the protocols. Well, what do you have? You have limited IPsec. Nobody uses IPsec. Well, IPsec it's only for existing router, legacy router. So you have to somehow support that. But then you've got Open VPN, which was dominating, and now we've got WireGuard, right? So where we want to move in the long run, and this is what I've been yesterday. I was with James. We were talking about it because we're becoming more of a commercial company, right? So we want to become protocol agnostic. We don't care. Okay, Open VPN, we can immediately plug in WireGuard if we need to. So we're gonna look at it more from that perspective. So these are the three areas in terms of the competition. So if we become protocol agnostics, and then from a market positioning point of view, is basically we just have to, craft our messaging and basically participate in a lot of these podcast conferences and going to all these. We're going to be
Awareness.
at RSA, and product wise, I think we're very well positioned in the marketplace. Where we're going with our product and the improvement, and our customer love our product. I mean, we get a lot of good customer, and we get a lot of feedback, and so we keep growing. It's just a matter of should we throw more money at this? We're trying to improve our go to market and go to the next level.
Yeah. Right? Yeah. So speaking of bullshit, one of the things I love about products with a freemium model, products with open source, I love to say like the most solid and resilient products out there are the ones that are free, because everyone's going to grab it. Everyone's going to use it. Some percentage of those are going to go to GitHub and create an issue, tell you things that are wrong with it or leave you a review somewhere. And it's always kind of tickled me, that if I spend $1 for an app on the App Store, my expectations are way up here. But if I spend $1 million for an enterprise security product, it might fall apart on my doorstep, right?
With a 40% chance your SIM rollout is going to fall through the cracks.
100% chance I'm going to run into bugs immediately, while I'm implementing it. So maybe some thoughts, like it just seems like a competitive advantage, right? Because you can't hide fundamental flaws in that what I'm calling the core product, right? Because it is open source.
You're absolutely right. Yeah.
There's no way to.
You don't have a choice to not listen to people.
So you brought a very interesting issue, and I keep saying this to people. They keep telling me, "Well, it's an open source. How it's secure?" I say, "Yeah, in the contrary. So the core technology, it's all the encryption." Everything is there. It's revealed. The code is there, right? So it's like white box and black box. So somebody is telling you, I have proprietary
principle, right?
Like there is exact like Netscope, for instance, they have the tunneling, right? But I ask them, what kind of protocol are you using Open VPN as a core? They say, no, we have our own SSL tunnel. I say, okay, it's proprietary, but nobody knows how secure it is. So when you have a black box, you say you're going to have to trust the vendor. Well, you're going to trust the vendors that you find a bunch of bugs with their product. Or do you trust an open source that at least there are a lot of researchers who actually, they review that and they leave comments, they improve the security aspect. So yeah, from a security perspective, obviously open source is the way to go, right?
Yeah, and I think that's what I was alluding to earlier, is that I think with open source, you get so much more support from the community that you can, not that you're not going to invest in your open source platform, but you can divert a little bit of time and resources to some of the paid stuff because you have community support. Yeah, I always think it's fascinating to think that whatever's going on inside a black box is somehow more secure than something that you can see.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a perception, but I think that's changing a little bit, right?
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah, in
absolutely.
fact,
And I think the tolerance for a lack of agnosticism and a lack of integration in the market has just plummeted. So I think, we
yeah,
went through this kind of VC and private equity boom through the 2010s and,
Mm-hmm.
up to the pandemic where everybody only wanted to invest in and fund proprietary technology and defensible IP. And so we just created this like silo farm that was, hyper fueled by VC and private equity money. And it seems like the backlash against that is happening now, or especially in security. Security analysts are like, this is bullshit. Like all of my platforms need to talk to each other. There
yeah.
is no excuse to hold my data
API
hostage.
first.
So I
Yeah,
think your push towards agnosticism is definitely going in the right
with
direction,
protocol.
because the tolerance for that, for being locked into something, has definitely gone away.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, we use a lot of open source even in our commercial offering as an example. For instance, when we do intrusion detection and intrusion prevention, we use Suricata with the Cloud Connexa, and that's an open source project. So there's a lot of open source, right? The other thing, the coding, React, well, it's all open source. What about Node.js? It's all open source. I mean, I can go on Java. It's all open source. So there's
Yeah.
nothing really in the stack, even the technology that we're using. We're just basically coding and hooking all these things together, right? And now with the AI, when you start getting into the AI, the whole thing changes. Open AI, everything is an open source there, right?
Yeah, and it's to Jackie's point, it's a very acquisition heavy environment we've been in. Certainly with interest rates going up, it was a buyer's market. We see a lot of acquisitions in all industries. And on day one, in IT or security, one of the things you're going to have to do is take that acquisition systems and integrate them into your own, right? And the expectation these days is that you should be able to do that on day one. Your SIM should support whatever stuff that they're using. Their observability stuff should integrate with yours. You should be able to pull that into your dashboards without having to, write up an RFP and buy all new stuff, or immediately migrate them off of the software that they're using, disrupt the business, and switch over to all new software. It's
Or even better, run two technical teams, trying
oh
to run
yeah,
two separate technical teams in the same organization,
yeah,
because you can't
two
get off of that
IPs. Yeah,
software.
I've seen that happen. Yeah,
Oh
absolutely.
yeah.
Well, I mean, when it comes to obviously a lot of enterprise software and whatever you do, whether a proprietary, even with the open source, you have to kind of build that, right? You can't get one open source that's going to solve all your issue in terms of the enterprise. It's a very sticky model. So it's very hard to really kind of transition to something completely new. So imagine if you don't have any open sources, it's all proprietary, that's even harder to transition to a new vendor, right? Pretty much you're locking yourself to a particular vendor for a while, right?
Yeah.
So, but in terms of the private equity, definitely we've seen a lot of we've been, I don't know how many emails I get every week from private equity firms. Let's talk. I mean, some of the big one for acquisition, and I'm saying I'm not for sale.
Good. Yeah.
Good.
Yeah, I think Cory Doctorow came up with the term enshittification, right? And I feel like I've seen a lot of that through private equity. I mean, not all private equity is bad,
No.
but they tend to be there to kind of swoop in when companies aren't performing, and take a bunch of like mediocre companies, maybe try and smush them together, make them go public, and it is a signal to the market. Right. When something's owned by private equity, people pause a bit and they're like, yeah, this better be a really good deal, because
Yeah.
my expectations are not very high for quality.
Yeah, you're also not protected by the new SEC regulations, aimed at public companies that actually require them to disclose security vulnerabilities and incidents and things like that. So it's definitely one of those things that, like, I'm not sure that whoever owns this has my best interest at heart. At least with publicly traded companies, there's some type of attempt
Yeah.
at regulation to force them to do the right thing.
Yeah. Yeah, it's been an interesting market. We've seen that's another thing we're talking about in the news today is SailPoint is, I think, is the first security company in 3.5 years that's filed for IPO. And even they have been taken private once. So it's they've gone through the rinse repeat private equity washing cycle.
Yeah,
I was going to call it a chop
going
shop.
public and then coming back private, right? Yeah, I don't know. I mean, that's another thing about the exit. I mean, where are we going to go with this? Are we going to keep it private like the way it is, or are we going to, engage with private equity firm? Of course, they always make it tempting. It's like, hey, we're going to give you a bunch of cash and money where you can go and, play golf or travel as much as you want, or have your own private jet and things like that. That doesn't really get me excited as much, right?
Yeah,
well, I
enjoy it.
I spent 15 years in finance, and I generally caution companies against going public, especially in security, because legally, once you go public, your sole number one obligation is to provide a return for your investors, not your customers, not your employees, not do what's in the best interest of cybersecurity in general. Your number one directive as a public company is to return a profit for your shareholders, and those are not your customers. So I don't think, unless you really need the exit money, a lot of security founders I work with, and I don't think going public is as cool as you think it is. Like, if you think SOX is fun, it's not.
No, I completely agree. One of the exit, because remember, we have some angel investors. So I'm offering them, okay. So basically, I've got a couple of investors, they want to be out, and we have enough cash in our balance sheet. I say, okay, I'm going to give you 10x. It's not bad, 10x return of investment. And still some of them are stubborn. Like, oh, no, we don't want to sell our shares. Okay, fine. But I mean, you have no voting. You're stuck there. I'm giving you right now 10x. You invested $1, I'm giving you a $10. But it's amazing how, because they're kind of just like, they see the growth and they just like, oh, no, the company is going to be worth more. 10x. It's worth 500. Maybe we wait 100 million. That's $1 billion. It's $2 billion.
Yeah, 10x is rare.
It is rare now.
Acquisitions in the market right now.
Yeah. Private equity are kind of giving now, with 50, probably they're giving 6x, 7x.
Yeah.
In some cases, I've seen 8x. Some more aggressive ones, right? When you especially are not for sale, it's like they're just chasing you all the time.
Well, hang in there, Francis.
I am.
Yeah, excited to see what you do. How you 10x the company in the next 5 years, and maybe in a couple of years we can do this again. And
definitely.
See where you are at that point.
I enjoyed the conversation. It was very nice meeting you.
Thank you.
Nice meeting you as well.
All right.
Thank you. Thank you again, Francis, for joining us on the Enterprise Security Weekly. And we'll be right back in a few moments with the weekly Enterprise News.